Hey everyone, welcome to another edition of The Bullet. My name is Paul Lathrop. I'm the Deputy Director of New Media for the Second Amendment Foundation. Joining me today, longtime friend and cohort, Rob Morse. Rob, of course, is Self-Defense Gun Stories and the Slow Facts blog. Rob, a few things that we've got to kick off. Well, as we get started, let me tell people that if you're watching us on the Facebook page for Polite Society Podcast or the YouTube page for Polite Society Podcast, go ahead and get your comments in. We'll get them on the air. We'll discuss them. If you're talking about what we're talking about, we'll discuss them. If you're catching us anywhere else, on Rumble, on Getter, on OpsLens, anywhere else, go to Twitter, tweet with the hashtag #TheBullet. We'll get those just as quick and get them up. Rob, first, the gorilla in the room today is, well, there's two gorillas in the room. One, there was no show yesterday. We'll get into why in just a couple minutes. But the other one is there's been a shooting at Michigan State, and I want to read a bit of a release from the Citizens Committee for the Right to Keep and Bear Arms, and that's the sister organization to the Second Amendment Foundation. The statement reads: "The man responsible for murdering 3 Michigan State University students and wounding 5 others should have been behind bars, but instead was free because of a reduced charge on a plea deal, a fact that should outrage not just gun owners, but everyone in the country." This is a quote from my boss, Alan Gottlieb. "Published reports say I'm not going to name this guy, say the bad guy was arrested on a felony gun violation in 2019. However, a few months later, he was released and arrested a second time on a less serious gun-related crime and was allowed to enter a plea on the misdemeanor charge while the felony charge was dismissed. He spent a total of 18 months on probation, but was allowed to retain his gun rights instead of being incarcerated, where he could harm nobody, and it appears he was allowed to escape imprisonment thanks to a lenient prosecutor. It's not just soft judges who make hardened criminals. It's also soft in the head progressive prosecutors." Its various published reports have revealed that McRae's past brushes with the law. Let's look at the facts. Guns are prohibited on the Michigan State University campus, yet he was there with a firearm. There's a law against murder in Michigan, and he committed 3 of them. What makes anybody think passing more laws will prevent the next madman from doing the same thing? I'm going to go ahead and leave the press release there, Rob. We're seeing this time and time and time again. This is a confluence of unarmed, defenseless victims and criminals who don't give a rip about your laws. They're going to do what they want to do. And we've seen it twice in California, now in Michigan in the past month.
Well, right. So we have a man who is literally dying to be noticed.
Yep.
We have a legal system and a prosecutorial system who will let the criminals and the crazies out of jail. And we wonder why they then kill to get attention, because we let them out. The media and the judges built this murderer.
And the media, the judges, and as Alan Gottlieb said, specifically a prosecutor did. You know, you got a gun charge. Okay, we're going to let you out. We'll let you plead to something minor. You'll keep your gun rights. Oh, you got another gun charge. Okay, we're going to let you out. We'll let you plead for something less again. And again, you get to keep your gun rights. And now the guy's out when he should still be in behind bars. And
hey, Paul, let's not. I'm going to throw the politicians under the bus because they so need to go there.
Okay.
He went to a gun-free zone.
He did.
98% of mass murders go there. 98%. That's not a flip of the coin. That's not a coincidence. That's intentional. Hey, I want to be notorious. I'm angry. He does not want to be in a shootout. He wants to be in a shooting where bullets are headed one direction. In fact, he killed himself when the police confronted him.
Yep. That's what cowards
We
do, man.
gave him a target, and he took it. You want to blame
Let's.
me, Paul? You need to press the button because I'll say something that wolves go where the sheep are. Thank you, Big
Yes.
John. Well said. Perhaps he's keeping his emotions in check, where I'm finding that hard to do right now.
This one is infuriating. It and they're getting more and more infuriating because, going back to the old saying about the definition of insanity attributed to Albert Einstein doing the same over and over and over again and expecting different results each time you do it.
Right.
Yeah,
So let me think. I've got a gun-free zone, and they're murdered in a high school. Oh well, we should make guns illegal. We should. Murder's already illegal. I wonder if making the gun illegal. Let's see. He goes to a college. I know. You already can't have guns there. We'll make it double illegal. What the heck? Animal House was supposed to be a joke. Don't turn it into reality.
Absolutely. Robert, following that kind of same line of thinking, wait, murder is illegal in Detroit?
Uh, Michigan, but all right.
And then another one, C&T Designs and Arms says mass shooters don't want two-way ranges.
Well said, sir.
Yeah, I'm going to get one more old saying in here, and then we'll.
Okay.
How many people would hunt ducks if ducks shot
back? Good point. You know what, Paul? If you and I just be quiet, we should just maybe just read what our listeners say, because they're doing better than I am today.
They are. Well, and if we get more comments in about it, we'll certainly get them up.
Please.
But I do want to move on to the reason there wasn't a show yesterday. I got word late Sunday night that, well, yeah, it was, I don't know about late Sunday night. I got word late Sunday afternoon, about 4 o'clock in the afternoon, about the same time that I on the Target Radio went live Central Time on Sunday afternoon. I got word through my wife Susan, who got it word through a friend of hers, that there was 2 gun control bills up in the South Dakota legislature this year. And oh, by the way, they happened to schedule that on Friday afternoon, they scheduled a hearing for Monday morning for those 2 bills. I was able to get a hold of Adam Kraut, who's nominally my boss. He's certainly in the chain of command and well above me, and told him, look, I've got a chance to go do this, but there will be no broadcast Monday if I go to Pierre. It's a
Right.
3.5 hour one-way drive. If I go testify in Pierre, I'm not going to be able to broadcast. Adam said, do it. So yesterday morning, I got up at 3 o'clock in the morning, was on the road by 4 o'clock in the morning, so I could be there when the Capitol opened up at 8, so I could get oriented to where everything was, where I was supposed to be, what was going to be happening. And then finally at 10 a.m., this hearing of the Judiciary Committee happened, and I'm gonna. There's a story that hit off the Argus Leader, hit actually yesterday. I'm going to read a little bit of this story, and again, I'm going to truncate a lot of it. 2 bills that would have increased gun control measures for youths and people in crisis failed in the South Dakota House of Representatives Committee Monday. Representative Linda Duba, and I got to say, this is terribly unfortunate. This is my elected representative in my home district. Representative Linda Duba, Democrat out of Sioux Falls, sponsored both bills. The first bill, HB 1213, would have required the safe storage of firearms so minors could not access them, and would have created a penalty if a gun owner was found in violation of the proposed law. Second bill, HB 1227, is a so-called red flag bill, would have allowed the state to take away any firearms from someone in a mental health crisis through an extreme risk protection order, and it lacks due process. I'm going to go ahead and, because the Argus honestly painted both of these bills really, really rosy. And I went up there to testify, and I'm going to say I was one of four that testified against the safe storage law, and one of three that testified against the red flag bill. And my testimony was extremely short. I got to tell you, Rob, getting up there in front of this committee and testifying was actually more scary to me than the very first time I pushed record in the bunk of my truck to do the Polite Society podcast, or at the time, Politics and Guns podcast. It was more terrifying than that. It was, and it was more terrifying than getting up and speaking in front of 1,100 people at Gun Rights Policy Conference. It really was.
Paul, can I tell you something?
Yep.
I used to give guys rides in my airplane. They would jump out. I thought they were brave men. One guy one time stopped and couldn't jump out. He had to ride down. He jumped out of several hundred airplanes. He was panicked because this was the first time he'd ever been in an airplane as it landed.
Oh.
So you talk to thousands of people a day, but your experience of being in the Capitol changed the setting and it feels different to you. So, wow, that's incredible.
Yeah, my heart was just absolutely thundering in my chest. And as anybody who watches the show knows, after my stroke, I will occasionally, words just stop. And I don't, the connection from the brain to the mouth freezes up for several seconds. Occasionally you'll see that happen and Rob will just jump in and take off like the pro that he is. But thankfully that only happened once, and the legislators were patient enough with me to wait me out and let me finish what I was saying.
Well, that's nice. Thank you. I mean, Paul, we have to keep things in perspective. Look, we created this problem. There's very good evidence that environmental delays through COVID, where we isolated children for a year, they had educational delays, they had developmental delays, they had mental health crises. We put them in isolation for a year in many cases. Okay, that doesn't help. And now we've seen suicide rates, particularly among young adults, increase. Mm-hmm. By the way, so has addiction. That's horrible. But I want to remind everyone, we can't solve a small problem by creating a larger one. We see more teenagers save the lives of them and their family with firearms than we see lose them through suicide. It's tragic. I had no argument. I want to fix it. Yes, please. But we can't fix it by making it worse.
Okay, I'm sorry. I got to get this one up. I really got to.
Put it up.
Robert says, politicians should be used to lack of connection between the mouth and the brain.
Thank you, Robert. Yeah, Paul, you and I struggle with that. Well, we've been married long enough. We struggle with it every day.
Sure. What surprised me was when they went to when the sponsor of the bill and everybody testifying in support of the bill. There was, when they set the committee set the rules, there was a total of 15 minutes, including the sponsor of the bill got 15 minutes to give pitches in support of the bill, and then everybody else who wanted to speak against it had a total of 15 minutes. On both the safe storage and the red flag law, the people in support of those took the entire 15 minutes, and honestly 20-30 seconds afterwards.
Yeah. Okay.
In both cases, we wrapped early, saying everything that needed to be said against. There was an attorney there who represented the NRA, and I'm really glad the NRA was there. There was a representative for Young Americans for Liberty. I'm glad they were there, and there was me. when it got time to do the red flag law. And I brought up statistics from Dr. John Lott, and I brought up the Bruin decision with a very thinly veiled, I don't want to call it threat, suggestion that should this go through, I know some people that might just enjoin this in court in a hurry.
But Paul, think of what we're saying. You have a 15-year-old.
Mm-hmm.
You leave them home for hours at a time.
Mm-hmm.
They may well babysit their younger brothers and sisters. They're probably student drivers. And we say, by the way, if anything happens, we can't let you defend your brothers and sisters with a firearm. That would be illegal. I'm going, really?
Yeah.
That, to me, that's management from a distance. People who aren't there make bad decisions. Oh, and if I let my 16-year-old defend his younger brothers and sisters, that's a crime? This is getting crazy. Oh, and what, you're going to red flag a 16-year-old? Oh, come now. So, and it just gets, and in many cases, they don't own firearms. They're using them with parental supervision. Yeah, there's plenty to talk about there. How did you guys get done in 15 minutes? There's so much to say.
Well, I'm gonna give. I was the last to speak on both of them.
Okay.
By my choice, because I was nerves. But anyway, if I had to do over it again today, I would go right behind. The NRA guy was first in line, and I have no problem with that. He's an official lobbyist. I have no problem waiting for him. But he actually was able to chapter and verse some laws, and he brought up great points. Look, it's already illegal to give your firearm to somebody who's a prohibited person. And if you know somebody's going to be committing a crime, it's illegal to give them the weapon. And he chaptered and versed both South Dakota and federal law on this. He said the safe storage law is duplicative. And then what I thought was really sneaky was this: both of the bills were put forward as suicide prevention. And that's a great. It
makes a great headline.
Yes, exactly. It gives great sound bites. It gave the Argus something great to write about, but it's not at all what the bills were about. The red flag law, 8 times in this red flag law, I read the entire thing completely while I was in the audience waiting for the whole thing to come up. 8 times there was ex parte specifically listed in that red flag bill. I mentioned that in my testimony. I said, there's no constitutional right other than the Second Amendment you would even consider ex parte elimination of.
Right.
We're gonna take away your right your right against self-incrimination, but you're not going to be there in the hearing where we're going to do it. We're going to take away your right to free speech, but you or your lawyer are not even going to know about the hearing before it happens.
I'm passionate about the next one. I want to comment if we can.
You want to take it, bud?
Oh, thank you. This one takes us down to California. It is not prettier news than the first story. The state's lawyers submitted the bad news on California's magazine ban. Both sides had to submit briefs to the federal district court last Friday. The California Attorney General, let's face it, doesn't have much to work with, given that the magazine ban is so egregious. The state's lawyers pulled out every shady argument that they could grab as they scrambled to justify the new law. They claimed that a magazine, it's not an arm. Yeah, see, so it's not covered by the Second Amendment. Look, right in the Heller decision, the U.S. Supreme Court said that contemporary semi-automatic handguns are covered by Second Amendment protections. They meant the magazine. They meant the bullets, the whole package. The lawyers claimed that California is merely regulating firearms when the Supreme Court said that the government cannot ban a class of firearms in common use. Look, you just outlawed all semi-automatic firearms with a standard capacity. That's a class of firearms. Didn't you read the law? And then, if the magazine ban is such a trivial restriction, why are there huge cutouts in the law to exempt law enforcement officers? In the very next breath, after claiming this is a trivial regulation, the state then says that standard capacity magazines are extraordinarily dangerous. They're killing everybody, and they didn't exist in 1791, so we have to outlaw them. The facts remain that standard capacity firearms are in common use every day. The state carefully ignored that there were magazine-fed arms that held 20 rounds in 1779. The California Attorney General said they had to limit magazine capacity in order to reduce mass murder. We were supposed to just look the other way and ignore that California already has severe magazine capacity restrictions and that at the same time it leads the nation in mass murder. Despite these laws being unconstitutional, their gun ban fails to reduce violence as they claimed it would. The rebuttal to these points looks at the state's arguments and called the emperor naked. No, you don't have any new clothes. There were no laws in the founding period that banned an entire class of firearms. The state did not and could not cite a single example. What the state did, and it was an embarrassment, they pointed to accepted racist practices of disarming slaves, Indians, and immigrants in order to excuse or justify their ban of standard capacity magazines that they passed last year. Frankly, I was shocked. I was embarrassed. We're way past the 1960s, so citing the concerns of slave owners from centuries ago isn't a historic pattern of behavior that I'd use to justify my political actions of last year. On a technical note, denying several classes of people the right to bear arms is not the same as denying the use, ownership, and possession of an entire class of arms to all citizens. In this case, the class is contemporary semi-automatic firearms, which hold more than 10 rounds and are owned by ordinary citizens for lawful purposes. I believe the case is now in the judge's hands.
I ran across a story this morning. I almost put it in show notes, but I declined because, quite honestly, it was almost a joke to me, but it would have dovetailed nicely with this one. California's Attorney General, Bob Bonta, called upon a retired Marine colonel to come in and testify for their AR-15 ban. The guy said one shot of .223 can separate a torso from the lower body of a person. Also could possibly decapitate someone. One shot with an AR-15, a .223, could decapitate someone.
He's retired, right?
He is retired, thank goodness.
Yeah, that's because soldiers would laugh his fool bottom off. Yes, that's so sad.
But yeah, that story would have dovetailed nicely here. I'm really hoping that the judge does see through all this. Do you know which judge it was?
Roger Benitez.
No, he's going to see right through this.
Well, he ruled on this before. The only reason the judge is looking at it at all is because the U.S. Supreme Court said, yeah, you've appealed this to us. We told you what to do. Go apply Bruin. And rather than the Ninth Circuit settle it, they said, maybe the state can come up with new evidence. We'll return it all the way down to the trial court. And Benitez has got to look at it and go, the standard of evidence from Bruin is clear. You didn't meet it.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. And I believe he will.
Do we want to go to Montana before we close?
Yeah, well, and possibly, we got room for just one more. Montana Attorney General called out big banks last week for discriminating against firearms companies while testifying in support of pending state legislation that would prevent the state from contracting with companies that have policies discriminating against firearm entities or trade associations. The bill would require companies seeking to do business with the state to disclose if they have policies that discriminate against other companies or organizations that are involved with the firearms industry or gun rights advocacy. Recently, Montana was ranked 5th in the nation for firearms industry jobs per capita, 2nd for the number of firearms shops per capita, and the highest rate of household guns ownership. Rob, Texas and Louisiana, I believe, have similar measures.
Yes. Right. Well, it's about time because, wait a minute, there are activist groups that get before bank boards and say, how dare you let someone buy an assault weapon with one of our credit cards? Excuse me, he went to the gun store and bought a hunting rifle. That's a pistol. It's been in common use. There are millions of them. They save more lives than they cost. What drugs are you on? But either the board of directors of a financial institution lacks the courage or the intelligence to do that, or maybe they just don't know. Maybe they're fed PR lines. Okay, some politicians said, if you want to discriminate, we will too. I like that. Let's get real. And we're talking about billions and billions of dollars in loans that these banks are forbidden from taking part in.
Let's get one more story, and we got about 3 minutes left. 4 years after Oklahoma's Republican legislature approved permitless carry, removing any training or licensing requirements to handle a firearm, lawmakers have filed more than 100 bills to expand gun access even further. One bill would allow guns parked in parked cars on school property. Another wants to expand access to a firearm while on a boat. And one proposal would increase the area in which a person could reasonably discharge their gun in self-defense. And I got to tell you, man, I do a news search every day, Rob. And what I get back from Oklahoma is the newspapers down there are losing their minds over this.
Well, remember, okay, let's say it's been a bad day in South Dakota. There was a self-defense event, and there was a criminal use of a firearm. The rate at which papers will report it is biased 1,000 to 1.
Oh, yeah.
You see 1,000. No. Wait a minute. That's not hyperbole. That's put a decimal place on it. They will have it run 1,000 articles that say criminal uses gun before one story comes out that says, store clerk saves his own life and life of customers. So I wonder if they read their own newspapers and are that blind to the truth, Paul. I couldn't tell you.
The old saying, again, I keep going back to old sayings, goes, if it bleeds, it leads. The vast majority of defensive gun uses never have a shot fired. Nobody bleeds.
Therefore, it never makes the paper.
Yeah, nobody's dead, so why write about it?
Well, but think about this. That is, okay, even rookie policemen have put their hand on their firearm when a guy came at them. Put down the pipe. Put it down. Don't come any closer. Now, maybe your partner can go for the taser, but you're there as backup because you can't stop this guy. That's the rule. It's extraordinary if, in a policeman's life, he has actually to shoot someone. The ratios are absolutely the same for honest, law-abiding, ordinary citizens. Bad guys act the same way for us that they do for the cops.
I want to get one comment in, going back to the Marine Colonel. Do you think that Marine Colonel trained with the AR full semi-automatic general? And Big John has a great point. Local newspapers are owned by national chains.
Touché.
And that is absolutely true with the paper that I led off the broadcast with, the Sioux Falls Argus Leader. That is owned by the Gannett chain, which owns USA Today.
There's a style sheet. All right, all the way to USA Today. Gotcha.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, Rob, we are plumb out of time
Paul,
here.
it has been fun. Thank you.
But as I usually do, I want you to tell everybody about self-defense gun stories and anything else you want to plug, man.
Well, I have my own little podcast. It's called Self-Defense Gun Stories, 20 minutes once a week. Snack food of a podcast. Load us in your pocket so you're armed with the facts. I write at the Slow Facts blog. From there, my writing is picked up and carried at AmmoLand Shooting Sports News. Today, I wrote 2 articles for their Armed Citizens column. I hope you enjoy them.
All right. On my end, I want to say do please come back tomorrow. Dan Waz will be here tomorrow. Also, tomorrow there's going to be a 2-for-1 tomorrow. I record in the morning with John Anderson, 10 a.m. Central Time, and I'll be doing that one live. Dan Waz at 5 p.m. Central Time tomorrow. The John Anderson, there's not going to be a show on Thursday because we're going to run John Anderson there. So,
let me guess, that's on constitutional carry, huh?
Yeah, it's going to be on what's going on in Nebraska. Yes. I keep saying this is my last comment, but this one I do believe really is because we're already
This is really
late.
the last one.
Simon Says Train, Self-Defense Gun Stories podcast has that stud Tony Simon on the show occasionally. Pound for pound, the biggest gun, is that where, I forget how he does it, but
The biggest
anyway.
Second Amendment supporter on the East Coast.
There we go. All right, Rob, thanks for hanging out today. Everybody, thank you for watching. Thank you for commenting. Podcast listeners, thank you for listening. And we'll see you next